Okay, Luke, I want to get your take on something. I recently read an article that brought up a really interesting point about the whole Conor versus Floyd situation. It basically asserted that if the fight somehow gets made and Conor collects the biggest payday of his life, that he would essentially price himself out of any future MMA bout, as the chances of him returning to the UFC's pay scale are slim. So if Conor fights Floyd, we may never see him inside the octagon again. Do you really think this could happen? It could. I find it unlikely. If he goes out there, I think the article you should read is Todd Martin over at Sherdog. He has a strong piece about it. And what he basically argues is, historically, if you look through, there's a reason to believe that if somebody has a certain impression of an industry, and then that impression collides with either A, greater reality about it, or B, the perception of some kind of challenge to the industry, which ultimately undermines it, it will, in fact, undermine it. So, for example, he notes that in Japanese history, Japanese pro wrestling, those guys were often seen to be the toughest and the baddest. Even if there was some degree of theater to it, people from other sports and other walks of life were brought in and often made to lose to those guys. And when those pro wrestlers started fighting real MMA fighters like Mirko Cro Cop and Fedor, they got dusted. That this badly affected the Japanese pro wrestling industry, that it couldn't really recover, at least not to the degree that it used to enjoy. And there might be other reasons why it declined, but that certainly is chief among them. And so this concern I have, he echoed it, but I've made it on this chat already. You know, there's a real concern that if he goes in there and, look, maybe he shocks the world. It's possible. Maybe he knocks Mayweather out in the first round. Maybe he knocks him out in the ninth. It would be incredible if he did, you know. He is a much bigger guy than Floyd. Floyd's getting older. Who knows? But in all likelihood, what will happen is he would get dusted. And in all likelihood, he would get made to look quite bad. And if that does, in fact, happen, what costs are associated not merely with his career, but the perception of MMA? Because I'm sorry, boxing media, and boxing's not doing all that great right now. That would be a shot in the arm for them. I don't think it would reinvigorate their industry to such a degree that they would all of a sudden be back on TV and, you know, 10 million viewers for PBC broadcasts on whatever channel. I don't think it would do that necessarily. But from a public relations or at least an imaging standpoint, they'd be able to say, look at those donks like Luke Thomas with 3% Neanderthal DNA, right? Look at those Neanderthals. They can do nothing relative to us. If you want to see unsophisticated brawls like we've been telling you they are for the last 20 years, go watch UFC. But if you want to see refined fighting, this is the place to come. And I think overall that potentially that is a risk you run in terms of the damage that could be wider to the sport. And I share that concern. I don't want to be in a world where McGregor tries his hand, and we would view it very differently. We would be like, Conor was the one who went over there and tried, you know. Conor was the one who went over there and put it on the line. Come to MMA and see what would happen. But Floyd is begging for this because he likely sees it as the easiest payday of his life. And you could say Floyd's crazy. I don't think Floyd's crazy. Floyd is one of the better gamblers I know. Maybe not so much on sports, although he's not half bad at that either. But he wants this fight because he thinks he would absolutely take McGregor's lunch money, figuratively and literally, you know. And I don't want to be in a scenario like that. I think it'd be very bad for the sport.